Happy Bitcoin Wednesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for the second Citadel Dispatch in a row, the interactive live show focused on actionable Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. I am joined here by Ride or Die Freak, good friend, return guest, Dylan LeClaire, to talk Binance, state of the market, ETFs. Yesterday we were in it for the tech. Today we're just going to go straight degen. And go that route. So very excited. How's it going, Dylan?
Doing great. I guess I'm the degen guest, huh?
You're the degen guest, yes. Yesterday we were talking about training Bitcoin developers.
Nice.
So where should we start? I mean, let's start with Binance. I mean, Binance is the topic of the week or last couple of weeks. Dylan and some others have concerns over Binance, and they are the largest exchange in the world by far.
Yep.
And so let's go into that. So Dylan, what are you seeing here? Do you want me to pull up anything you just sent me?
I mean, we can hold on to that, but
Okay.
I guess so. I also just sent you one of my threads too.
He's sending me charts. This is how degen this is going to get.
Yeah. All right. So where do we start here? Well, there's a lot of things. One, the title here is Bank Run on Binance.
Question mark.
Question mark. Yeah. There's still, Binance has a whole lot of Bitcoin, a whole lot of, I guess, quote unquote, crypto, like 600, 700,000 Bitcoin as it stands. So
it's like $18 billion worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah. There's no bank run at the current moment. In my opinion, there should be, I would not hold funds on Binance.
So
not because
no bank run, but there should be a bank run.
Yeah. Essentially, and here's why, I guess I would say. And the state of crypto Twitter is pretty ridiculous whenever you raise these points. Like, just to be clear here, a lot of people, when I say this, whether it's about FTX or Binance or previously FTX or literally any crypto bucket shop, derivative, yield farm, whatever, they're always like, oh, you're fudding, or like you're a bear, or like, you missed the bottom, or like blah, 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 blah. It's like, right. Okay, I have a significant amount of my net worth in Bitcoin. My parents have their money in Bitcoin. Like, trust me, like people that are thinking like I'm fudding, have a vested interest in like Bitcoin collapsing or whatever, are just like out of their minds, don't even know what they're talking about, and are the point is going completely over their head. Why do I care about Binance? Why am I like commentating on Binance? Well, one, generally, I guess my job, you could title it, I don't really have an official title or care for all of that stuff, but like a Bitcoin analyst, right? I guess you could frame it as such. So why do I care about Binance? Well, reportedly, they're 70 to 80% of the spot volume for Bitcoin and, crypto pricing, right? And when did I first start talking about Binance? Well, it was shortly after the collapse of FTX, when, the same patterns that we saw with SBF leading up to their collapse, with the token price, with public statements from SBF, CZ's kind of attitude, or not attitude, but actions and statements and words being very similar to SBF. And this isn't just anecdotal, right? So what did SBF do, right? You see all, Celsius collapse and Luna and 3AC and GBTC and all these yield carry trades and whatever blow up. And SBF, throughout the summer is like, FTX is this giant that came out unscathed. And they're like, we're going to bail out BlockFi, and we're going to write a term sheet for Voyager, and like, industry bailouts. And he's going on CNBC and being like, we're here for the industry and for the ecosystem. And there people are like, is SBF the modern day JP Morgan? And like all these dumb narratives. And, I didn't like suspect that FTX was mass insolvent at this point, but it was literally
a Ponzi scheme from the beginning.
Yeah. It was like, well, this is odd. And so someone over the summer sent me a balance sheet, it was a marketing pitch for Alameda from the summer of 2018. And that was following the 2017 bull market, obviously, when Bitcoin went from like, it hadn't yet fallen to 3,000. I think it was like 20K to like 6K, right? And it's like super volatile up and down. And it was an Alameda pitch deck of like, hey, we're a quant hedge fund, blah, blah, blah. Here are our returns. And their equity curve was like a straight line.
Right.
And it's like, we're compounding at this, that, and the other thing. And it's like these loans, and they called them like loans to the Alameda. They're like, these are risk free. And someone sent me this, and I was like, yeah,
It
haha,
was
man.
like high return, risk free, is what it was.
Yeah, it was like, and it was like, we, these are like 20% APR loans that like we, are risk free. And I was like, yeah, haha, like, you fabricated this to try to make Alameda look bad. Like, this is like literally, obviously, a Madoff style Ponzi scheme. If such, there's no way this, like, these guys actually posted this. Like, anybody with half a brain would know this is fake. And as it became increasingly clear, basically with the CoinDesk leak coming out, that Alameda, this Titan hedge fund that people thought was like, the smartest people in the room for crypto, ironically, were, levered their entire, all their net equity on liquid shit coins. And as it turns out, we're commingling funds with the FTX balance sheet. Right. And that became clear when, Caroline was like, hey, we'll buy all your tokens at $22.
Right.
And it was like, holy crap. And you pulled up, and I'll get to how this relates to Binance. But you pull up the FTT chart when she tweets this, and I live posted this off the hip, all on Twitter.
Yeah,
like,
I remember. Shit was lit.
I was like, holy shit. I had never looked at an FTT chart before. I couldn't care less about FTT's stupid fraud exchange token. I look it up, and I was like, holy shit. She just tweeted her line in the sand. And you look at the chart, and it's like FTT went from $2 to $22, or like to like 80 or whatever.
Yeah, went way.
It went from like 2 to 20 on no volume, no price action, no price discovery, straight line in like late 2020, early 2021. And I was like, oh my God. Because, like, okay, for instance, Matt, right? Stay humble, stack sats. We're like, yeah, nuke Bitcoin. We'll buy as much as we want. We don't care. We're in it for the long game. We want to acquire the asset. I don't care about the near-term exchange rate. So if someone's like, hey, we'll defend this price, of our own token, especially, like Warren Buffett wants the price of his assets he wants to own to go down. Bitcoiners are like, send a nuke. We want to buy the bloody like red candle. When someone's like, hey, we'll defend this price, and like, that is obviously a red flag, right?
Right.
Like,
No,
holy shit, line in the sand.
there were a lot of FTX red flags, but
they were levered against their exchange
broke
token.
the camel back.
They blew up. So post FTX collapse, which, ironically so, was CZ calling their bluff. He was like, hey, we're dumping all of our FTT tokens, like a couple $100 million. And then you saw like a bunch of speculators on BitMEX, on Binance, ironically on FTX. People were shorting FTT, shorting the hell out of it, and it was basically a call on the FTX solvency. Okay, they blow up, people lose their Bitcoin, etc.
But just two things I would add here, if we're doing a timeline. Binance was a essentially incubated FTX. When Alameda first started, they were on BitMEX. They wanted to launch their own exchange so they could own the house as well. And Binance basically gave the startup seed money for that. Then FTX thought that Binance was a black eye on their cap table, and they were having trouble with all the suits that they were friends with in America. So they wanted to get Binance off the cap table, and that deal that FTX basically bought back their equity from Binance involved a large portion of FTT token. So when CZ, and then the way the story goes is SBF and his suit friends were in Washington, and they were basically trying to, and this is, everyone knows that he donated to a shit ton of politicians. He bribed a shit ton of politicians. That what he was trying to do was basically say, put up this regulatory moat, make FTX the de facto champion, and we'll crush Binance together. And he heard basically through the grapevine that SBF was angling to take him down, and he took that FTT token that he had, and right before he dumped it on the market, he tweeted out, "We are dumping them all on the market," which caused the initial panic, and then the rest is history.
Yep. And so what did CZ do after, right?
Yeah.
Biggest competitor goes down. It's a massive win at first, right? Their biggest competitor, FTX, kind of this meteoric rise.
It's not even a competitor, but okay.
Yeah. Well, in theory.
Do you remember when CZ went on CNBC during it and was like, we don't like thinking about other smaller exchanges that we don't compete with. We like to focus on growing the industry.
Yeah. And initially, you could interpret it as like, a relative, and it was, I guess, a relative win for Binance, right? It's like, this other derivative casino that, was so dominant, came out of nowhere, SBF poster boy, Forbes covers, whatever. They're gone.
Super Bowl commercials.
There's no other place to go for crypto, Dgens. I mean, there is, but like, if you just think about the derivative kind of marketplaces and like the kind of the preferred bucket shops, it was like the BitMEXs of the world. And then Binance came along, and it was Binance. And
like BitMEX particularly got very neutered when the 3 founders got arrested and they added KYC.
And we've kind of seen like this hop of like, there's kind of this new, exchange or, unregulated bucket shop where everybody can go and you can be John Smith from whatever country with a VPN and you can trade and it's all great. And then, it takes a year or two and international law comes in. And like, let's be clear, I'm no statist. I'm not like, shut them down. People can do what they want with their money. Yeah. But we've seen, kind of this relative rise and fall of all these exchanges. And so it was like, okay, great. Binance helped to take out, their fraud competitor, all good, a bunch of market share, a bunch of coins, bunch of volume flows to Binance. Okay, great. CZ comes out and it's like, the one thing, and to me, kind of like the art of war, like playbook starts to play through my mind. And I'm like, look strong when you are weak, when you are strong, don't show it, that's, I forget the original quote, but it was like, it was very, very reminiscent of what SBF did with kind of a public projection of strength. It was like, hey guys, the lessons we learned, and CZ literally tweeted this out. He's like, the lessons we learned from FTX is, never trade against your customers, never leverage against your own exchange token, never take loans. We have no outside loans.
No leverage period.
No leverage period, right? Yeah. Great. Good. Great rule, CZ. Love it. He's like, also like, we're going to bail out the industry with $1 billion of BUSD. And everyone's like, CZ, you're awesome. You're the man. Like, thank you for, having a vested interest in crypto and forwarding this movement, yada, yada. Okay. So, me, and I wasn't the only one to do this, just curious, was like, all right, $1 billion of BUSD. Here's the blog post, copy, paste, address, Etherscan. It's like, oh, great. Etherscan labeled one, industry bailout recovery fund. Awesome. One click over. It was a 2-hop. One click over, another click. A day before that, it's in Binance 8 wallet. So I'm like, wait, what? Binance 8's at exchange reserves. And people like also, in the comments were like, wait, TZ, what? And they put out the day after. They put out this, and I can pull up the link if you give me a couple seconds.
When was it? It was like,
this was like late November, right? Right after.
About almost a year ago, like 10 months ago.
Yeah. And it was like basically a blog post that said, roundabout way, our security is so good that we keep our corporate funds in the same exchange addresses.
Right.
And it was like, wait, what? Like, and this is right after FTX gets run and they say, what's the most important? Transparency, auditability, blah, 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 blah.
Proof of reserves.
Here's our proof of reserves, and this company, this Mazar company, CZ goes, he goes, audited proof of reserves, #transparency, shares this Mazar's audit. First of all, it's not an audit, it's an attestation. It's a company instructing a firm, an accounting firm, that their instructed way of measuring whatever they want you to measure is how they say it. And so Binance literally has a bunch of listed addresses. They say, here's our addresses, here's how much money we say we have, is, verify if it's correct.
Yeah.
And Mazars is like, yeah, sure. And a bunch of people, including like, one of the ones that was like pretty laughable to me was like, Willie Woo was like, oh, great, thanks for sharing. What are your liabilities? And CZ's like, oh, well, liabilities are harder, but we don't have any, just ask around. And to me, I just laughed. I literally verbally, audibly laughed out loud because it was like a month before we had FTX, this dominant player who was leveraged I mean, they did have Voyager and a credit line of Voyager, Alameda did. But when CZ's like, oh, ask around, we don't have any liabilities. It's like, you have, billions upon billions upon billions of dollars of notional assets and liabilities on the Binance platform via derivative exposure. So okay, how do we connect all these dots, and why am I kind of going on this weird long tirade? So what are the big similarities with Binance and FTX aside from their derivative bucket shop, shitcoin casino? Well, one of them, the most obvious one, is an exchange token, right? And if we think about literally every crypto company besides essentially BlockFi that collapsed in 2022, what do they have in common? In hindsight, they had an exchange token, the
Right.
Celsius, right? That model where, whether it was a yield offering or whatever, it was this exchange
But to be
token
clear,
flywheel.
this was BNB pioneered this, and they all copied BNB.
Yeah, it was like, oh, FTX went down, SBF, criminal, blah, blah, blah. Where do you think SBF and FTX learned? What model did they copy? They didn't copy the BitMEX model. The BitMEX model was Bitcoin only. We're going to, you can't, there's no stable coins, there's no crypto. It's just Bitcoin denominated derivatives, right? And that was like a pretty simple model. It was, I mean, honestly, it was kind of like, a really cool cypherpunk kind of model of like, hey, chuck on a VPN. You don't need anything. You just log on with the email. You can trade, free market, whatever. And did they trade against you? Of course they did. But everybody knew that and just kind
Comes
of
with the
accepted it.
territory.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, they trade against us, but like everybody
The
knows
shadow
it.
bank bucket shop.
Yeah, it was just like the golden age of like a casino. And so, being Binance comes in, pioneers this like, we're going to list every shitcoin ever. We're going to list the perpetuals and derivatives, and we're going to make every single trading pair. And, and degenerate crypto traders love it, right? It's like, I can trade like literally every shitcoin pair against Bitcoin, against Tether, against whatever.
BNB.
BNB, right?
ETH.
And so I guess, Matt, if you want, pull up the first chart I sent you. This is the BNB market cap. And
before we get there, just really quick, we're 17 minutes in. Freaks, regardless of any of this, it's just don't trust any custodians, not your keys, not your coins. Just learn how to hold Bitcoin yourself. It's not that difficult. Okay. Yeah. Dylan agrees with me. Dylan, what do you want me to open?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the entire point of all this. This is a long roundabout way of, people think I'm like, accusing me of being some paid actor against Binance or whatever. It's not Binance unique. And I've said this multiple times. It's not an agenda against CZ or Binance.
It's not even isolated to just the quote unquote crypto ecosystem. Like also like don't trust Bank of America. Like just
it's like, this is what Bitcoin fixes is like no counterparty risk. Right? You hold your own money.
Okay, I interrupted you, Dylan. Where am I going here? Which link do you want?
Yeah, well, we're going back to why do I question Binance, right? And so looking at the similarities of FTX and Binance, I look at the exchange token, right? And this is back in November, I first looked at it. And there's a fiat valuation and there's a Bitcoin valuation. And if you look at literally every single altcoin, and I don't even care about these things. I had never looked at BNB until last November after CZ started tweeting like a, SBF summer clone. But every single altcoin against Bitcoin, people always think it's like some magical story, Ethereum, future of finance, Solana, all this garbage. All it is just beta to Bitcoin with speculators. It's super liquid, low float garbage. It goes way up in a bull run and crashes. And every single altcoin crashed against Bitcoin in 2022. All of them, because Bitcoin crashed 85% or 80%. Right. Binance, BNB in Bitcoin terms went to all-time highs, floated to all-time highs. Right. And it traded in 2021, it traded with like 2 to 3 times the volatility of Bitcoin. And in 2021, and in 2022, it trades with the same volatility of Bitcoin and goes to all-time highs in the Bitcoin pair. And, this is when CZ's tweeting about all this stuff, about how virtuous he is, whatever. And I'm like, this makes no sense. BNB, this ETH clone ghost chain that nobody uses is worth 2.83 million Bitcoin. That makes no sense to me. And so CZ being like, oh, we have no liabilities, whatever. And also tweeting at the same time of like, we've never sold any BNB. And it's like, Matt, what would you do? First of all, like, this is just the assumption that, the BNB price is organic, and no one sent it like soaring to $100 billion valuation. But in 2017, they create a shitcoin from nothing. 4 years later, literally 4 years, maybe 4.5, it's worth $100 billion and you own half the float.
Yeah.
Right. But who sent the market that high? Right. It wasn't retail, right? Like it wasn't like plebs stacking BNB. Who pushed it there? Right. Who pushed Celsius token? Who pushed FTT?
No, but okay, wait. So first of all, like, can you explain what the what if you were talking to CZ, what would he tell you the value prop of Binance BNB is, and what would he tell you like the mechanism they use to increase its value?
It's you get a discount on Binance fees, and it's an ETH clone, and you can use it in the Binance, quote unquote, Binance ecosystem.
The Binance Smart Chain, but no, but also they take like a portion of trading fees, and then they buy Binance BNB, and then they take it and then they burn it, provably burn it, right?
Yeah, but this is the thing. They're not actually burning anything. They're just like taking their stake that they gave themselves and being like, oh, I guess we're reducing the supply.
But they
And it's
send
like,
it to a burn address, right?
yeah, but like, and people are like, oh, I guess that makes it more valuable. And
But
it's like,
like the where I'm going at this, where I'm coming from on this is um, like Coinbase is traded on the Nasdaq. You can buy Coinbase shares,
yep,
and what Binance would tell you, what CZ would tell you, is that BNB was a way for people to get exposure to Binance's success. Um, exposure to Binance's success without a proper equity stake. It's not actually stock. It's not
yep,
actually shares in the company, but you have some exposure to upside of Binance being successful. That's his shill, basically, of BNB.
yep,
Obviously, I'm not endorsing. I'm not saying it's the case. I mean, as Dylan said, BNB is up tremendously against, or it's outperformed Bitcoin over a certain period of time. I'm pretty sure when I first started telling people don't trust BNB, do not hold BNB, it's centralized custodian on steroids and completely propped up by Binance, was like 5,000% ago.
yeah,
But my point is the mechanism behind BNB is literally like I don't know if they have a white paper or whatever, but in the press release that released BNB, it's like, we are going to prop up the price based on our revenues. As revenues come in, we're going to burn BNB and reduce the supply, right?
yeah, and there's like a whole roundabout way of doing this, but yeah, essentially that's supposedly the value prop, right? But when I look at this, and this isn't a really Binance specific thing, I just look at like if it was Tesla stock or Apple stock or Bitcoin, even kind of similar to like how Bitcoin traded at like 30K middle of 2022, and it was like this multi-year kind of support thing, and you're like, holy shit, take TA for a grain of salt, but you're like, this looks pretty damn ugly, right? In the same way that FTT did. It's like multi-year support, trades from $20 to $200 in a straight line from 2020. And against Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's at 27K, man. The first time Bitcoin traded at 27K, Binance BNB was 80% lower in Bitcoin terms. So it's up from the first time Bitcoin touched 27K. BNB in Bitcoin terms is up 500, 600%, right? And every shitcoin is lower. So it's like, oh, maybe Binance is like hyper successful. Maybe. But me being skeptical, have my doubts. And I personally think they've put hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars more than advertised, and probably, in my opinion, this is pure speculation. I don't have insight into their balance sheet, and no one does. It's a black box. But I personally think that there's a lot of shady stuff going on, and I don't think that the price of their shitcoin has a non-zero relationship with the notional solvency. Is all I've said. And people like get all upset and mad at me for that.
You think if, I mean, you keep saying this 212 number, you think if BNB goes below 212, then they become insolvent?
No. Well, it already has. But here's what what I'm saying is they have a ton of ammo, and the ammo is all their customer funds, right? FTX wasn't exposed until their Bitcoin got drained. So Binance at 700,000 Bitcoin isn't, they're not going to ever CZ. They're not going to be like, oh, well, guys, guess what? Our assets and liabilities don't match up. We're closing down shop, right? That's not going to happen. But not only just like, me being kind of like some conspiracy theorist, whatever, they've been proven to multiple times to have rehypothecated funds by the billion. One, putting $1 billion of the industry fund from customer wallets.
Well, we don't know if that was from customer wallets.
But they said this is only customer funds, and then post-mortem after the fact, they were like, "Oh, I guess we keep our own corporate money in the same thing because our addresses are so secure."
Yeah, but like that's not. I don't know. So like, look, I'm no fan of CZ. I've been an outspoken critic of him. I think that, uh, you know, I he's intentionally, misleading about his messaging. He tells people not to self custody. He does all this shit, right? Propping up BNB, definitely propping up BNB. But all that said, like I just don't think it's a fair comparison to compare him to FTX or Celsius. Like CZ is a different breed. He's from a different generation of Bitcoiners. And I mean, Machinsky was just a straight up scammer.
Yeah.
And then like FTX, BlockFi, Gemini, I guess Gemini, like maybe I can't group into the same era diagnosis, but
Their
like,
yield product was shit, but yeah.
but a lot of it was like, look, we're suits, we're fiat maxis. All banks rehypothecate. Like, of course, we're going to generate yield. We want to generate yield. Yield is everything. We got to put our money to work. And they were all like massive, massive degens. But CZ, is first of all, the exchange is on a completely different level. Like it's hard to measure these things because volume can be faked. A bunch of different metrics can be faked. But if you look at the on-chain balances, it's a significant difference.
Yep.
And if you just are in the space, it's very obvious. Like it's Binance and then just a big drop off. Even when FTX existed,
Yep.
like Binance completely demolished FTX. It's this massive exchange that's been operating for a long fucking time outside of government purview, like massive target on their back from the US government. I would like, they're more comparable to like a Bitfinex and a Tether.
Yep.
Bitfinex and Tether are tied at the hip. And first of all, wouldn't it be ironic if all the suits that said they were going to come to save us were the massive degens and CZ wasn't? He was just like humbly scamming people with trading fees and propping up BNB that he owned a shit ton of. And then, second of all, like I think if you look back at old Bitcoin history, like that was not a ridiculous setup to have. You had your cold storage, that you had some like ridiculous multi-sig scheme completely cold, and then you had your hot wallets, and like suits would call that commingled and like not an ideal situation from accounting purposes. But like to me, that's not necessarily the red flag that it would be. And if
Yeah.
you look back at FTX, even right now, we're looking at the on-chain balances of Binance. It's way higher than everyone else, but we agree that obviously it's not a proof of reserves is bullshit. There's
Yep.
no proof of liabilities. There's no way to even do it.
Yep.
But with FTX, you remember FTX days, like Glassnode and shit weren't even tracking FTX wallets. Everyone was like, "Oh, they have great fucking OPSEC," but they just didn't have any fucking Bitcoin whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I just, yeah, I really
Let's be
don't feel
clear.
like
I mean, you labeled it. You labeled the episode "Bank Run on Binance," not me. But I agree. It's a completely different level.
it's weird because I am in this weird situation where I feel like I'm defending Binance,
Yep.
because there's so much conversation and speculation around them being like FTX and being insolvent. I mean, I titled the episode "Bank Run on Binance?" because it's clickbait. It's just like, but but that is the conversation. Like, is there a bank run on Binance, right? And I think a lot of people think there is.
There's
And a
not.
lot of people think it's like an FTX type of situation. You see a lot of suits that got rugged by FTX calling it the same exact thing, a lot of comparisons to it. And I just don't think the comparison holds water. I put it more in like a Tether Bitfinex camp. Like the biggest threat is probably a cruise missile or, regulations, but like I like the term cruise missile diplomacy, where like the US government takes them down.
Yep.
And a lot of the arguments against Binance to me feel more in the Tether truther camp. And that's what I'm trying to unpack there, because I mean, I know you look at the numbers, you have a lot of analysis there. Like I have tons of respect for you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's a few more instances. One, the $1 billion thing was just kind of one notch, one arrow in the quiver. Another few things is like the whole BNB Binance chain, right? They had like this, and this was just another kind of red flag that wasn't like a smoking gun in of itself, but just another kind of thing that was like, really, right? So they have like this BNB, they call it like B tokens, right? They wrap an asset, quote unquote, and then they issue it on Binance Smart Chain. Okay,
right.
fine, right? Like a bunch of the shitcoins have done
Then you
it.
get DeFi, quote unquote.
Yeah, quote unquote DeFi. And like, let's be clear, right? Like BNB is not even like, I shit on ETH all the time, right? We talk about risk factors and it being centralized and the development and all that stuff. But since the DAO hack, right? ETH hasn't been like, okay, guys, like stop trading, we're rolling this back. They haven't done that since
compared to BNB, ETH looks very decentralized. Is your
compared
point,
to BNB.
right?
Like
BNB is
got
literally
hacked.
just a single company controls it. Boom.
BNB got hacked or a bridge got exploited in September of 2022. They straight up halted the thing, right? They straight up halted the chain. Like all the centralized validators on Binance, right? So it's different in that sense. But let's go back to the B token, right? So there's all these, there's Bitcoin, Tether, BUSD, Ethereum, billions and billions and billions of dollars of this. Their backing of these tokens, particularly the BUSD, right? Paxos issues a stablecoin. Paxos, a pretty legitimate US financial institution. They hold the treasuries for Binance. They have attestations. They have CUISP kind of debt issuance numbers, so you can look it up. You can verify that these are real. These are real debt securities that are backing it. It's all legitimate. They issue a BUSD. Binance, kind of labeled, named stablecoin. Great. It goes up to $20 billion. And then Binance, takes billions of dollars of the stablecoin, parks it in a wrapped contract, and issues it on the other side as a Binance, a BNB chain. So it's not trading on ETH as Paxos issues it. It's trading on Binance Smart Chain. Well, post-mortem, come to find out that throughout 2021 and early 2022, there was billions of dollars of unbacked BUSD issued on Binance Smart Chain. Also, come to find out that there was billions of dollars of USDC, Tether, and 100,000, 200,000 plus of Ethereum and some Bitcoin that were backed literally in the Binance regular exchange wallet balances, right? So you would say, or maybe you could steel man it and say, well, that's the addresses of their, most sound security or their biggest multi-sigs or whatever.
Right.
I would say, listen, they're taking one asset and they're issuing two liabilities against it. One liability is the asset that they're supposedly pegging on the other side. So they're taking one asset and they're owing one to their customers, and they're creating another asset on the other side that's a wrapped token.
Right.
And there's no way for us to know the customer's off-chain balances, meaning like what you see on the UI UX, like Binance, I have one Bitcoin. See, like look at it says one Bitcoin here. There's no way to determine what that Bitcoin is or how much how much they say they owe to their customers versus what's in the actual address. So for months on end, they had billions and billions of dollars issued on Binance Smart Chain, backed by the same exchange wallets that they used in the proof of reserves attestation. If you are not an incompetent account, like if from an accounting perspective, if you're not extremely incompetent, best case is extreme incompetence, then you segregate them. Worst case, and I'm not saying this and merely posing the probability, the worst case is it's outright fraud and you're double counting an asset, right? That's literally accounting fraud. And so obviously
CZ will not sue you for calling him fraudulent.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, right? Like, but just, this is how accounting works. And so, I went through, did a bunch of digging, like there was billions upon billions of dollars of this. And it wasn't just, Tether, USDC, whatever. It was literally, the shittiest bottom of the barrel shit coins that they were doing this with. It was like post FTX, CZ starts like schizo tweeting, like, transparency, proof of reserves, and then goes to his backend engineers is like, guys, we need to figure out this accounting stuff. And his guys are like, wait, what? And he's like, I don't care, just throw an address on there. And so like you look at this and you can look at the Internet Archive. and the proof of reserves backing, the addresses backing the same amount of output tokens on BNB chain, right? So the same amount of tokens are on the pegged outside. You look at the Internet Archive, and the addresses that are pegging the tokens are changing, like sometimes by the day. They're just changing them, they're reworking them, they're shuffling the balances. And then finally, as of like a couple months back, when Bloomberg and Reuters called them out on it, they're now segregated and in their own address, right? So it's like, okay,
So they are segregated now.
They are. But the point is that Binance has, 600 or 700,000 Bitcoin. How much? And we have no idea. No one does. But all I'm posing is like, and again, they're not being bank run. They're gonna have a long time, unless they like freeze your account, which they've done for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For like compliance or whatever.
No, I mean, if Binance did theoretically go down, like, it's not going to be like FTX. He's not going to like call his mommy and be like, "Oh, let's do a bankruptcy process, get lawyers involved, restructure, and like maybe relaunch again or some shit." Like, it's going to be a long, drawn out process where there's no withdrawals are getting frozen, they're getting delayed. Like,
yeah,
this,
he's more savvy than SBF in that sense, right? It's gonna be like,
it's a good old fashioned, crypto bucket shop.
Yeah, and so like, again, it was just another example of like, okay, he's like, we have all of our customers' addresses segregated and whatnot. It's like, it's just a big pool of crypto assets where they have like notional like 55 billion bucks of assets, right? Of, every shit crypto, stablecoin, Bitcoin, and, that you can think of, wrapped Bitcoin, whatever. But on the other side, like there's clearly in somewhere, some way, asset liability mismatches because they have no idea what they're doing from an accounting perspective. So like, no, is Binance like imminent failure? No, right? The DOJ is coming. The SEC is already SEC. Like, I raised all of these points.
Yeah, but none of that means anything. You have to isolate it, because that's like saying like the DOJ is going after Tether, so Tether's a scam, or like Tether's insolvent.
No, I mean, it's not saying, like, again, I'm not saying that,
because like they're an enemy of the U.S. financial hegemony. It's like, it's the same
Binance
way
or
people,
Tether.
all of them, Binance,
Tether's
Bitfinex,
Tether's not.
Tether is.
Tether, I mean, Tether owns more treasuries than like Mexico, or at least supposedly, right? The Tether Truthers would say it's all fraudulent.
Tether's a shadow dollar that is used mostly in situations where you can't use a regulated dollar, and that's what everyone missed when they thought like USDC and like PayPal coin and all these fucking regulated stable coins competed with it, because that's not the point. If you can get something regulated somewhere, then you don't use Tether. I don't know. In my mind, like, Tether has a massive target on its back from U.S. regulators. Bitfinex does, and Binance does, and they always will until they die.
Yeah.
Like, that is the situation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I agree there. I think I disagree a bit on. I think maybe this is completely flat out wrong, but I think Tether's given a little bit of a special circumstance, regardless of like, having all these like, stablecoin kind of euro dollars issued on like shitcoin chains that, can be used to facilitate whatever kind of, I mean, it's a transparent blockchain, but you don't know who's using it, right? Like, it's not regulated or compliant,
Well, like, they'll occasionally freeze addresses, but
on occasion, wink, wink, right?
They're slow about it. Like Tornado Cash, even, they like Tether delayed it as long as they could possibly delay it, while like USDC did it right away.
Yeah.
Like, all of these I treat like they're essentially shadow banks. They're outside of U.S. financial regulations.
Yep. So like, I mean, and again, I raised these points before SEC, CFTC, whatever. I think DOJ is still coming, and maybe that means anything. Maybe it doesn't. But like, all the things the points that I raised about, the accounting stuff, right? Like, we saw they stood up Binance US as essentially it was a sham of like a separate entity. They funneled all of that money through CZ's, separate companies to Paxos. They were taking customer money to issue their BUSD stablecoin, right? Stablecoin pumps it to 20 bill. They pump BNB, BTC rises in tandem.
He's definitely pumping shit.
Yeah. And so it's like, and here's the thing also is like, the narrative was with FTX, right? And everybody was like, this is how everybody got duped, was like, they're a money printing machine. Look at their volume. They're
Future Goldman.
Yeah, it's like they're gonna, yeah, and he's like, maybe we buy Goldman Sachs. It's like they're making billions of dollars in trading fees. Like, how the F could they be insolvent? Blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, they do, right? They make billions of dollars in the same way that like supposedly Binance is like printing billions upon billions of dollars
It's a
of
bad
money.
comparison.
But like, here's
Like,
the thing: is that Binance CZ? We look at, you're looking at the volumes, and you're like, they're making so much money, right? Like there's, 1 million Bitcoin of trading volume on like the perps or the spot or whatever. And then it comes out and like this was, what people inferred, right? Like the conspiracy theorists that were like, there's no way this volume's real on like Tether
what was it? 0% trading fees, right?
yeah, 0% trading fees, but it comes
Of
out that
course,
like,
the volume's not real. That's by design.
yeah, it's like, oh yeah, they like CZ has like 300 bots. Well, this is what like the SEC or CFTC suit says, but like,
But it's not
you
even
know,
just CZ. Like, if you give someone 0% trading fees, like, you're going to pump your volume numbers up, and then it
yeah,
becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you pump your volume numbers up because just external people come in and they trade back and forth because they don't have to worry about trading fees, so they can try and scalp shit.
yeah,
And then that fake volume or fake-ish volume then attracts real volume into the system, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yeah. And that one of the points that I've raised, and who knows if this is right or not in the face of the Grayscale news yesterday, but if you read like past, and maybe this transitions us to like the ETF talk, but if you read past ETF denials, there's one for like the New York Stock Exchange or
Right.
ARCA suit back in like March of 2022. It was one of the earlier kind of like, it wasn't exactly a spot, like a one-to-one spot Bitcoin ETF. It was some like stupid carbon credit Bitcoin fund, but the redemption mechanism was like that of a spot ETF. And so they weren't trying to issue a spot ETF, quote unquote, but it was like a fund that had spot Bitcoin exposure with creation and redemption. It wasn't a one-way trust.
Right.
And the SEC comes back and is like, hey, we have a few problems that are still not resolved, and you haven't given us any info on how we're going to deal with this. One, like, we're concerned about manipulation of the Bitcoin market by a dominant entity. Two, we're and they listed like 7 or 8 things, and like 4 of them read, if you read between the lines, they read in all caps Binance. It was like,
Yeah, that's the real conspiracy, Dylan.
is what that the
Like,
ETF is waiting on.
look where we started. This all started a year ago when SBF tried to knife Binance behind the scenes with suits.
Yep.
And CZ responded in kind, took out FTX, took out a bunch of suits that were all intermingled in leverage degen craziness, like, wiped them all fucking out, made them all look like fucking idiots,
Yep.
including like top tier venture funds, like the biggest names in the world, all got fucking rugged. Mr. Wonderful is like fucking on TV. Tom Brady got rugged. Like, he just takes them all fucking out.
Yep.
But that doesn't change the core of it. The core of it was, let's kill Binance. They start trying to kill Binance. Binance responds back, and now they're still continuing to try and kill Binance. Like, if you look at it, if you look at if you look at US suit control over Bitcoin markets,
Yep.
right? When they say they don't want manipulation, what they mean is they want manipulation that they control. They want to be able to manipulate the markets. They want circuit breakers. They want to be able to rehypothecate funds and not worry about spikes that go down and liquidate them. They want full and complete control over the market, as has been their privilege historically before Bitcoin existed, on all these assets,
Yep.
including gold.
Yep.
And what stands in their way of doing that? What stands in their way of doing that is 2 things. First of all, that it's incredibly easy to self-custody Bitcoin, and people, humble stackers, are just constantly just taking Bitcoin off the market, holding it in self-custody, ideally spending it in a circular economy eventually, if not already. And there's also all these smaller P2P markets that are even harder to stop, almost, and they could become black markets if they get criminalized. Right now, they're not in most parts of the world, but they would become black markets if P2P got criminalized. And then you have Binance, Bitfinex, Tether, right? Like, if you look at the metrics that can't be faked, which is exchange wallets, the
Yep.
list of exchanges goes Binance, Coinbase Pro, selling surveillance software to the US government and wants to be the surveillance package for all the ETFs and wants to hold custody for all the ETFs, and then Bitfinex. And then there's a drop off. There's a big cliff. Right after that, like 3 to 4, there's no fourth best. Put that on your quote, Michael. So to me, like the conspiracy is let's fucking kill Binance. Let's kill Bitfinex by any means necessary. We can change the rules however we want. We can hit them for this. We can hit them for that. Maybe they fucked up an accounting thing here. Maybe they did this here. Maybe they did that here. And I think that's what we're witnessing. And part of it is fueled by influencers and fund managers that got wrecked on FTX and are embarrassed and want to see the whole thing taken out.
Yeah. No, I agree there. Coinbase essentially, and who knows, but I think the secret, or not, maybe not so secret, the SEC motive, the suit motive is get, especially with like the flurry of new ETF applications that came out in midsummer. What was the change that kind of spurred like this, increased approval odds and changed the game, and with BlackRock and all that other stuff? It was the Coinbase surveillance agreement.
Yeah.
And that is irrelevant if Coinbase is only doing quote unquote 5% of the volume of
if Binance and Bitfinex are out there, it's irrelevant. And then when you go back to the P2P markets, who's the largest P2P player in the developing world in Africa and Latin America? It's Binance P2P.
Yep. And so, again, like I'm not a shadist per se. I'm a big proponent of free markets, but what I think that they're going to be hit with, aside from if you just look at like fiat rails for crypto firms, right? If you just look at the fiat rails, especially, particularly for Binance, right? What was it? It was Silvergate, Signature, who both had 24/7, 365, essentially like fiat ramps. They weren't a stable coin, but it was like a dollar transfer rail, and all the crypto
had Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, it was an Excel spreadsheet, SQL database, dollar transfer system with every single crypto entity. Gone, right? Paxos BUSD stablecoin, $20 billion ordered to wind down, now at $3 billion, right? The fiat rails have closed in. Binance US kind of like shell company entity to get dollar rails shut off, right? And Reuters comes out and it's like, oh, hey, like this is just a shell entity that they're using to funnel money to the main Binance platform, right? Shut down. The SEC comes in,
which also should not have been a surprise to anyone.
No,
doesn't mean that they're insolvent though.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it just means that they're, either incompetent from an accounting perspective or commingling funds. But correct. And so,
and also that like literally Binance US was set up as a front to try and get American customers into Binance.
I mean, you could see this. Like, it was surprising to me that people were surprised by it because, like, multiple times with Tether, I think with a couple times with Ethereum, with like Bitcoin Cash, some like random shit coins, it was like, we need to like wallet rebalance, like withdrawals are paused, like just give us a little bit, and then you literally can just like pull it up and just like look at the withdrawal address, and you just see funds from Binance.com labeled wallets just flow in, like millions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, yeah, well, we knew 6 months before the SEC told us that they were obviously commingling funds. That's not news to anybody. But like, the Grayscale news come out yesterday. Everybody celebrating. Like, what's shadowed by it is like
Barry Silbert.
Yeah,
still owes billions of dollars to people. It's been a long time.
Apparently there was some creditor news yesterday that I didn't really follow, but apparently it's a pretty shit deal for the creditors.
So let's talk. I mean, continue.
No, I just think we see like the SEC comes out with a sealed document yesterday against Binance. They never seal anything. There was some SEC kind of.
Do they not?
No, sealed documents apparently, and I'm no expert on this, but I just read some opinions from like well-informed ex chiefs of SEC and some other commentary on Twitter, and it's like very, very rare if they do that, and they only really do that if it's disclosing information that's in an ongoing criminal investigation, likely DOJ. So I think
like DOJ is doing something, so SEC doesn't want to blow up their spot.
Yeah, and so
does anyone see the sealed document? Do they send it to Binance, or is it just like we have a document in an envelope?
I think that's basically it, and they can and Binance can
see that's such a fucking scam.
Binance can say, like, hey, we want this revealed, but then
look, Dylan, it logically would flow that they would, you know, if they're going to try everything to take down Binance, if they can incite a bank run, like they might as well poke the bear and see if, you know, how weak it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if they
Sealed indictment or whatever SEC calls it, statement.
Yeah, I mean, what they're gonna slap Binance with, and like, if this incites a bank run or not, I don't probably doesn't. It definitely doesn't, because crypto degens don't care. Like, a lot of the feedback I've gotten on like the data I put forward is like, yeah, and they're like, oh, like Binance commingles funds and trades against the customer.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I
Like,
know, of course, yeah.
they're like, yeah, you know, but we don't really have anywhere else, so like, you know, just shut up. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I guess that's fair. But they're gonna probably slap. The DOJ is going to slap like money laundering, whatever charges on them. You know, again, whether it's right or not, whether KYC, AML is bullshit or not, different topic. But this is I guess, the reality of it. So, unfortunately,
But I don't think that's the thing. The problem is that the suits commingle. You know, Binance is commingling customer funds with corporate funds, but the suits commingle breaking U.S. financial regulation with insolvency, right? Like it's like, oh, you're breaking U.S. regs, like you're clearly FTX. Like this is clearly SBF situation. That's the issue. The issue is that is not separated in my book.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's two different risks.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think Binance goes away. It'll be interesting to see how resilient they are when the hammer comes down, if the hammer comes down. But I think that the reason like the spot ETF hasn't come out is probably because of a lot of this stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if Binance, all these other kind of crypto bucket shops are still standing, and if the SEC is going to be, you know, forced because of court decision to release this stuff.
Look, I mean,
again,
obviously Binance is gonna, you know, collapse sometime soon because I'm defending them. So it would just gonna jinx it.
Yeah, imminent.
But don't you think it's interesting that, you know, we saw the BlockFi degens blow up, we saw the 3 Arrow Capital guys blow up, we saw Gemini blow up, we saw Barry Silbert blow up, and all of those guys blew up. Do Kwon blew up, and a bunch of those balance sheets we got to see.
Yep.
And I've never seen CZ in any of them or Binance in any of them. And like, obviously, like the lack of seeing something doesn't mean it doesn't exist or whatever. The lack of whatever, I don't know the phrase. You butchered a different phrase earlier, so I just butchered that one. But like, you don't see, they were all trading amongst each other.
Yep.
In like massive circular loans, like ridiculous leverage, like fucking Barry like had a massive loan on Luna or Terra, one of the two. One's the derivative of the other. Like they were using it as collateral.
Yep.
Like, what if like CZ was just like a survival Bitcoiner that obviously also became like a shitcoiner, but like actually does not have much leverage. Maybe, I mean, zero leverage is almost unbelievable, but doesn't have that much leverage. Like when he takes leverage, he borrows against Bitcoin, which is like the best sovereign individual collateral ever. And he keeps all of his own personal wealth and everything commingled with all corporate funds and all that shit. It's all just fucking commingled to fucking kingdom come. And he's like, at any day, Delta Force could just land a helicopter. Or we remember what happened to BTCE. Like the Russian guy was like vacationing in Greece, and they like rammed an unmarked car into his gate. And then when he came out in his underwear, they arrested him, and he was still logged into his computer. Like that's CZ's threat model. Like CZ's threat model is like he could be on vacation somewhere and fucking the long arm of the U.S. government just comes blowing through the door while he's showering.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it is possible. You know, that's why you self-sovereign Bitcoin custody is where it's at. I agree. Like people, because I analogize some of the stuff that Binance has done to FTX, people are like,
it's not really you that does it the majority of the time. Like I'm mostly talking about other people.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people told me to shut the fuck up when I was saying Barry Silbert owes billions of dollars and that DCG was fine.
Can we like
I'm like particularly angry at them, and I have a bone to pick, so I'm just doing it through you.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. I think one of the things that I think about from like an analysis perspective that I didn't appreciate as much as the time, and in hindsight, it's super obvious, but your particular like kind of beef with Barry is totally warranted in this sense because of how much of a role, and it's very much not appreciated. Like everybody, when you think of the 2020, 2021 bull run, they're like MicroStrategy and corporate adoption and like whatever. And like DCG and GBTC, I mean, like really Grayscale Bitcoin Trust was a massive, 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 massive driver of the bull run. The biggest, in my opinion, by far. And it's not very,
Yeah, that ridiculous trade they were doing. The fucking
like not only the spot inflows, right?
let's everyone fucking do this high risk trade that we pretend is low risk against our own in-house wrapped Bitcoin shitcoin.
Yeah. Not only did they buy 300,000 Bitcoin, so spot flows were just, a super constrained Bitcoin supply for, that's been, 3 years post 2017, bunch of, hardcore hodlers that aren't selling shit versus like, Silbert's billions upon billions of dollars of just buying. But also on the other side, they have Genesis, which is saying, oh, we just created a GBTC share that's at 20% of your 20% premium to spot Bitcoin. You can use that as collateral, borrow more money, and pummel into the trade again. And so like the whole crypto yield thing, like Bitcoin yield, BlockFi, Three Arrows, FTX, all of this was like an extension, a derivative of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust carry trade. And so like in hindsight, super obvious, but like I think it's just very much not appreciated that like the spot flows were obvious, but like the carry trade that was, that all of crypto became dependent on, or not all of crypto, but like the yield products, that was all GBTC. And then when the GBTC discount premium went to a discount and the futures leverage and that carry trade blew up, the last leg of this, the last gasp of a bull cycle that they tried in 2022 was UST, right? It was like the Luna Ponzi. That was the last yield gasp, and then everything blew up. And so for the most part, the good news is we've cleared that out. Now Bitcoin's at 25K. We're still 60% from the highs. There's no volume and no one gives a shit. So Bitcoin's dead again. It's great. And now we're just kind of waiting, and the plebs are kind of in a waiting game. And I think we're like, I would say like market conditions are similar to like 2019 midsummer, where we're just chopping around, like people like the emotions and the volatility of just like flirting with a bull market, but then just kind of like insta dumping for no reason. Pretty similar. The chopping conditions are pretty similar. And we probably got like, 12, 18, who knows, maybe 24 months before like what people think of as like a Bitcoin bull run really manifests. And maybe I'm super wrong with that timeline, but that's kind of how I think of things.
Dylan, I have to pull you back because you let your rant distract from the fact that Barry Silbert owes billions of dollars and the culpability he has in the last fucking cycle dynamics.
Yep.
And like it cannot be understated. Like I feel like that's the lesson that is being missed here. And we're letting the suits set the narratives. So I pulled up this tweet from December 2022. I don't know if you remember it, but it's literally the exact conversation we're having right now. It is great that many are skeptical of Binance. Users should not trust custodians and should withdraw Bitcoin from all custodians ASAP. That said, do not let Binance concerns distract us from the fact that Barry Silbert still owes Gemini users $900 million. Withdrawals remain frozen.
Yep.
And why do I bring this up again and just want to reiterate it? Like Barry, Gemini, Coinbase Mafia, FTX guys, not all of them failed that I'm listing, BlockFi, like they were all part of this suit contingency that I have the Gemini advertisement right here. Crypto needs rules, new money, new rules, crypto without chaos, the regulated cryptocurrency exchange. KYC AML, it will protect you. Like we are the suits and we're here to protect you. And any exchange that's not part of the US financial regulation system is unsafe.
Yep.
And those are the guys that fucked the hardest. They were the guys that were the most degen last cycle.
Yeah.
Like
The yield products, all a scam.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, I'm really curious actually, and I guess we'll find out the answer in a couple of years. Maybe there, really will be nothing new under the sun. but I wasn't around for the previous few cycles, where kind of a big, a lot of tough lessons were learned and then seemingly forgotten as new entrants came in. But I'm really, really curious to see if in the next kind of absolute mania frenzy, which I imagine will be an order of magnitude plus of what we experienced in 2021, and will just be absolute batshit crazy, like can't even comprehend it now. I'm curious to see if the Bitcoin yield stupid games arise, and if so, in what fashion or form.
Yes.
Yeah.
The degens will, there's like, people always be degenerate.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, you know, like freedom tech is hope, but also like, you can't stop people from being degens with it.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole point of freedom technology.
Yeah.
It's like people have to have personal responsibility to make their own decisions. And it just turns out that a lot of humans really like to gamble and play crazy games. And just because they're wearing a suit doesn't mean they don't, I
Yep.
guess is my point. We see data Nostrum in the Nostr chat. That's at sildispatch.com/stream. Saying, was CZ a Bitcoiner before? Yeah, I feel like most people, like, this also like doesn't come up with the SBF stuff, and a lot of new corners just don't realize, I think. Um, like CZ's a long time Bitcoiner. Like he's been around for over a decade. The guy started as like, I think like a small time pleb at blockchain.info. Also
Yep.
never use that wallet. Don't use that wallet. It's a shitty wallet. Pretend I didn't say it, but that's where he was. It was like the number one wallet at the time. Then he was at OKCoin for a while. I might have mixed up the order. And then I think after OKCoin, he left and created Binance and
Yep.
went off on his own and created his own exchange. And for a long time, what was happening was there was it was like a new bucket shop would open. They'd have no KYC. Everyone would go full degen on it. They'd have shit tons of volume. And then the founder would either exit scam, there'd be a theft, or the US government shut them down, and then there'd be a new bucket shop. And we saw this happen like 6, 7, 8 times. Like who would control the top volume? Um, and the last two that did that before Binance was Bittrex. US regulators took them down, and Poloniex. And then Binance took over all the volume. And there, if you go back on tweets, like I'll own it completely. Like I said, Binance is going to get replaced as the bucket shop. But Binance has remained top dog. He is fucking ruthless as an operator. But also, I think what happened was there was this transition in degen crypto land to these quote unquote decentralized exchanges, DEXs, that took a lot of that no KYC volume, and he made sure to take his piece of that. Right,
Yep.
like there's DEX, quote unquote DEXs on Binance Smart Chain, and their BNB is all a part of it. And he was very deliberate in that effect, because most of these exchanges, they were flash in the pans. It was like whoever had no KYC, the most leverage, least
Yep.
friction, were the ones that were dominated, and then the new one would pop up.
Yep.
So I guess know your history, freaks.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, it's maybe some people will like disagree with this, but no, I mean, to be frank, like I think CZ is a Bitcoiner. Obviously, he's a shitcoiner too on top of it,
Yeah,
but
all
like
the shitcoin, like all the major shitcoiners were like Bitcoiners first until
I
the
don't
new.
think SBF was. I think SBF
That's
was just purely
until the new breed.
yeah.
He came in as a fiat maxi.
Yeah. Yeah. SBF was always just a grifter.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
it's
mean, we'll
like
see.
post ETH people, like people that came in post ETH. For the most part, are like they came in just like fiat maxis directly into shitcoins.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
I honestly believe that SBF thought FTT was a solid collateral.
Yeah.
I think he believed his own shit. He was like, "This is the best collateral in the world." I don't think CZ believes that about BNB. I think he's like, BNB is my Ponzi token. Like
Mm,
I'm not gonna over leverage myself on my Ponzi token. Like it's doing its job already and making me a lot of fucking money. And
mm.
like if you compare, like the example I would say is like, you know, Delta Force is like
But I don't
rating.
think they're making money on BNB though. I
No,
think
no,
they're losing
but
money.
here's my point, Dylan. My point is like SBF, like Delta Force comes in and tries to take out SBF in a hypothetical situation, and he runs with his go bag. Like his go bag has like FTT, Serum, like all the Sam coins, But like CZ's go bag is just Bitcoin. Like he
Mm.
doesn't, like it's not like he's like, oh, I can still use my BNB and all my fucking bullshit
Yep.
derivative BNB things after the fact.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, yeah. Yeah, CZ is just a Bitcoiner that's
It's a scam
utilizing
out there, yeah.
crypto. Yeah, yeah, that's
It's
fair.
just
That's a fair
different.
assessment.
I don't know what, I mean, and then, like, that's SBI. There were very few of us sounding alarm on FTX before it happened because they were just so buttoned up. But, like, BlockFi was, like, very obvious for a long fucking time.
Yep.
Um, fucking Celsius, like, anyone grandstanding about calling Celsius a scam before it came out, like, congratulations, you have at least an IQ of 20. It's like that was the most obvious fucking scam in the fucking book.
Yep.
It's a different level. Like, it seems like false comparisons.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair statement.
Okay, so you wanna talk some moon juice on the ETF news? Like, how do you feel about this ETF stuff? I feel like we just talked about CZ for an hour, and now he's definitely gonna exit
Yeah,
scam
yeah. Sorry for
tomorrow.
the shitcoin content.
He can literally exit scam tomorrow, and I'll just say sorry, freaks. I hold your own keys.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only reason I like listen, like am I trading BNB? No. To be frank, I would short it if I could find a counterparty that I'm comfortable with, but I can't.
Yeah, that was FTT had the same issue.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the only
I think I messaged you that, as, like, FTX collapses was happening. I was like, "Did you find a place to short FTT?" You're like, "No, man.
yeah,
Everyone wishes they had one."
yeah, like some idiots were shorting FTT on FTX, which is funny, but never mind the shit coins. The only reason I even pay attention to that stuff is because I'm interested in the Bitcoin market.
Anyway, I do not advise shorting a
Yeah,
centrally propped up, controlled asset.
Ponzi.
It's a very dangerous thing
Yeah,
to short.
yeah.
Keep that in mind.
Agreed there. Not an endorsement at all.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, the ETF stuff. No, I mean, I think it's obviously good. The market is absent flows, right? The plebs are stacking, TM. It's true. It's been true for a while. There is a small amount of passive flows that come into the market and buy Bitcoin every day and put it away and don't sell it. And you can see the Bitcoin supply just becoming more and more constrained. And a bull market happens when supply becomes constrained, meets an equal or greater amount of flows, and price goes parabolic, or price starts to rise, and it becomes a kind of like a reflexive loop, and
Stackers
eventually,
set the floor, and then
yeah,
FOMO intensifies.
yeah, and then FOMO intensifies, outside capital dumps in.
All
Um,
weekends get washed out.
yeah, coins transfer. Some hodlers, like the narrative is like, oh, hodlers never sell. No, like hodlers sell every time. That is the people that accumulated for 3 years dump on the new bags, and then there's just
Yeah.
not enough money to come in,
But
and
you
price
gotta,
drops.
like, eat. Like, if
Yeah,
you're all in Bitcoin, you gotta sell some Bitcoin
yeah, no, I mean
or
that's
spend it
you're
directly.
damn right for buying knives in the bear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so where are we right now? There's no real meaningful flows outside of like the people that have, right? Like no one at this point, and maybe they are under the surface. Maybe we, see, a micro strategy like announcement come in. But I think a lot of people, based on kind of some of the stuff that we discussed in the first hour, the U.S. people, maybe it'd be interested public companies or hedge funds, or the likes of like a Mass Mutual or Stan Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones are sitting here and saying, okay, well, let's just wait a bit for some of this stuff to clear out. So who's buying the Bitcoin? Well, it's the Bitcoiners, right? It's the Bitcoiners that are buying every day. They're holding the way. It's their their rainy day fund, and they don't care and they're not selling. What are like the near short term, medium term headwinds? Um, well, we probably get a recession. We've been talking about it for a while.
We're
Initially,
already in a recession, Dylan.
yeah. Well, I mean, not technically. Stock market's doing really well.
All a scam.
Unemployment
It's a scam.
officially, the data is saying the employment or the labor market's really strong.
Yeah.
And what we see, we've been talking about it for a while. Admittedly, I was a bit wrong on the timeline. I'll own that 100%. But what we see, these Fed kind of rate hike and then cut cycles, right? They don't cut until pain comes. And so everybody's kind of like conditioned from like COVID to be like, oh, shit gets bad. Fed money printer go
Yeah.
burr, up only. Let's go. Like Fed pivot can't come soon enough.
Right.
And like you look at like
Like
besides
the Fed
COVID,
tea leaves.
yeah, you look at besides COVID, all right? Like look at when the Fed cut. Look at the Fed funds rate, line it up with the S&P 500, or you
Yeah.
can line it up with like, economic data, but just look at like the indices. Who cares? Look at when they cut, and then look at how equity markets performed the
Yeah.
last like 3, 4, 5 cut cycles. Markets crashed. Well, like why? The Fed like cuts rates, and then all of a sudden conditions get bad? No, the Fed's cutting rates because conditions get shit, right? So like the
Right.
Fed funds rate, they haven't cut once yet. So they're gonna hold, and they're gonna hold, and they're gonna hold until shit gets bad. shit's going to get bad and they're going to cut and shit's going to get worse. And then that kind of reaction function of like maybe they print money or the fiscal stimulus, who knows what president we have. But like, just being honest, like we still got that ahead of us. And the timeline on that is sometime in probably 2024. So the ETF is good. It's going to open up a lot of, well, it's not proved yet, obviously, but it's going to open up a lot of ease of access for US institutions to put money into Bitcoin. It's going to be obviously, a shitcoin wrapper on it. It's going to be custody at Coinbase. BlackRock's going to take their 50 basis point fee.
Yeah.
We know all of that. But it does open, for better or worse, like if we're thinking about how Bitcoin's going to become financialized, right? And it does.
Well, it was inevitable. It was going to happen.
Yeah. But
it's going to happen eventually. And the whole point of Bitcoin is that we can't stop them from launching an ETF, regardless of if you think it's an ethical product or not.
100%. And like, a lot of people will say, oh, well, the gold thing. Well, the gold can't be transferred in a day's
gold
time.
Can't be traded on Binance 24/7 either.
Yeah, that is true, right? Gold doesn't have robust peer-to-peer markets. But like this, and I've was talking to this with some other people. I think one of the things that's not really appreciated is that like I can take my index fund that's held in my Goldman Sachs account, not me, but like say I'm a high net worth individual or an investment bank or whatever. And I can pledge my Tesla stock or my S&P 500 index or my GLD gold trust. And I can borrow, billions upon billions of dollars of that collateral.
Yeah, the fiat maxis love borrowing against fucking equities.
Yep. I mean, that's the game, right?
Because you don't pay cap gains tax.
Yep. Rich people don't sell assets. They borrow against it, or maybe they buy, they buy puts or whatever. It's this whole financialized game. But like, yeah, you don't sell your assets when you're a billionaire. You borrow against them, whether it's your real estate or whether it's, your family office's index funds that you haven't sold in 20 years, right? So this Bitcoin thing, it's going to open up a bunch, or this ETF thing, it's going to open up a bunch of flows. I don't think it happens immediately. And I think Bitcoin becomes even more correlated with the equity markets, right? Like people say it's like a bad thing. It's like, no, it's not a bad thing actually. Like, oh, it's correlated with equities. Bitcoin got neutered. It's like, well, no, like how do equities trade, right? They trade based on like credit expansion or credit contraction of the fiat system, right? It's like the USD denominator. Is the Fed pumping money in? Is credit expanding or is it contracting? And that's how equity markets trade, right? It's like stocks go up.
Well, I think it'll be correlated until it isn't.
Yeah.
And then when it's not, everyone will pretend that was always the case.
Yeah. Well, and there will be points where like right? Bitcoin has a 20% day and equities are flat or something.
Like
right?
Bitcoin will trade as a risk asset until it's the most it's like the safe haven asset of the world. It's like, and then there's a point there. It's just, I don't know, Parker, gradually, then suddenly. And it's just like hard to measure the point. And then after that fact, everyone will pretend they always knew that was the case.
Yeah. And I agree with that statement. I've said that before. I think, saying that to like someone that's not like a super orange pilled Bitcoiner, they look at you a little crazy. And they're like, maybe putting the cart before the horse. That's a bit of a ways away.
All I do is put the cart before the horse.
But like, to get there, Bitcoin, to get to that point, Bitcoin has to make it, or has to make its way on basically every institutional balance sheet in the world, right? The way that we get, the way that you get to this like crazy hypothetical, hyper Bitcoinization moment that people always talk about, including myself. I've talked about it, right? Like how does it get there? Well, I'll tell you how it gets there. You get Bitcoin on the asset side of every balance sheet, whether it's spot in a cold storage, multi-sig.
There'll be a bunch of different flavors.
Or some, bullshit ETF.
Everyone will get rugged constantly.
And there'll be a bunch of rugs, but you get it to the point where it's saturated enough where it becomes like from an asset liability perspective. Like why does the Fed bail out the housing market and print a bunch of money in 2008? Why does the Fed come in and buy corporate bonds in 2020? Well, it's because like the system, if they let things unwind, would be fucking insolvent. That's right. That's the fact of the matter.
The system is literally insolvency by design. Like everything you speculated about Binance is literally in the public disclosures of Bank of America. I mean, not the commingling funds and shit. But like they just don't have funds.
Yeah, like, Charles Schwab is insolvent right now. Charles Schwab is mark-to-market insolvent. They hold a bunch of long-duration debt. Yeah. They pumped a bunch of their customers' money in.
Fractional reserve banking.
Yeah, right. And so, like, yeah, I give a bunch of shit to the crypto firms because, like, in theory, in practice, they're one-to-one, not fractional reserves, and all these rugs are when people attempt that. And so maybe Binance has or hasn't. That's a different story. But yeah, the fiat system, right, of like where money creation is from new debt issuance, has to expand forever. That's just a fact, right? That's like pretty, regardless of like how bullish you are on like the Bitcoin adoption itself, which is like the main value prop of like, there's a scarce asset that people continue to adopt in waves. Like the fiat denominator is going to zero, or the supply of fiat's going to infinity by design. Like that's a core component of the system. So like, yeah, we win by
dollars trending to zero.
Yeah. And like, that's a simplified, thesis or whatnot, but like look at
everything's trending to zero sets.
Yeah, that's how it works. And so like from an ETF, the thing that gets me excited, I guess, is like, yeah, there'll be flows. It'll be in the billions of dollars. Yeah, like I think that I don't think Bitcoin's gonna like go to 100K, go to the moon if equity markets are tanking, if there's a recession. But like we know what comes on the other side of a recession. We know what comes on the other side of like any sort of taper tantrum meltdown. Fed balance sheet number go up.
Can't taper a Ponzi.
Can't taper a Ponzi. So like they're still in the point where they are pretending, we're all collectively pretending they can taper a Ponzi. It's like a classic like Fed tightening playbook right now. We're seeing all the signs of like, holy crap, like we might actually get a soft landing. Like
imagine so Dylan, like imagine you're flying to visit family, you're on an American Airlines flight, and like all of a sudden there's a bunch of turbulence, and then the power shuts real quick, the power comes back on, and the plane starts going down, and the pilot gets on the prompter and goes, we're not going to be crashing here today. We will be soft landing.
Yeah.
Like that's what's happening right now.
100%. And like,
the term soft landing itself just sounds so fucking Orwellian or double speak.
Yeah. No, like you wouldn't, if the flight was going great, you wouldn't announce any, it's
called a crash. Like you're crashing.
Yeah. And so that's, that's what's going to come. To what severity has yet to be seen. Right. But that's, the boom and bust cycle, right? Like is a function of a fractional reserve credit-based system with a centrally planned cost of capital, right? Like the Fed literally engineered like all of the things that were problems in 2022 and I guess now, right? Like the inflation and all of this stuff that like they had to raise rates to fix, they were asking for in 2020. They were like, holy crap, like we need a bunch of inflation, right? Like inflation needs to be higher, print more money, zero rates, zero for up, through 2024. They finally get the inflation. They're like, great, this is good. Equity markets all-time highs, economy's flying. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, like this is way higher than we wanted. They're going to cut rates, or they're going to raise rates to 5%. And now what are they saying? They're saying literally the opposite, the inverse of what they were saying in 2020. They're like, well, we just need a little bit of unemployment to get inflation down. And then we'll be all good. Right. And it's like the same guys that wanted a little bit of inflation to fix this debt problem now only want to generate a small recession and a little bit of unemployment to fix the inflation problem. And people are like taking it at face value as like, oh yeah, it'll be great. So like I'm super bullish on Bitcoin. I hold a bunch of Bitcoin, like a relatively large percent of my net worth in Bitcoin, not 100%, to be frank. But like, and I don't know what price a recession comes.
Are you above or under 50%?
I'm above at the current moment, nice. But that's, that's not, I'm young 20s. Like I don't really give a shit about the volatility.
I'm essentially all in if you don't include home equity.
Yeah. Love it. And levered against the house, probably.
I mean, look, don't borrow against your Bitcoin, but like if you can get fiat denominated loans, like that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. 100%.
I like the 30-year fixed rate mortgage is
beautiful thing.
One of the best welfare systems in America. It is a welfare system, and if you don't take advantage of it, someone else will.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, rates are like 8% now, but
it just depends what inflation is.
Yeah, and so
and that you can handle if prices drop, you can't necessarily refi. because you might have less equity. Like you might need to increase your down payment, so you need to have money on the side to be able to refi. But
Yeah,
so,
definitely. Maintaining, cash flows and solvency is the biggest thing when you're thinking about borrowing against fiat. But like, what does the rest of the year look like? What does 2024 look like? That's anybody's guess. But I would say with a decent amount of confidence that this time is not different in terms of like the business cycle, the credit cycle in fiat world. And they don't like the Fed reaction function is essentially they don't ease. Things don't get better. They don't turn the printer back on, cut rates, etc., until things get bad. So where does Bitcoin trade in that scenario? Where is it going to trade in the next 6 months? I don't know. But that's my plan
when
essentially.
100K, Dylan.
Yeah, that's who knows. But my plan is essentially to whenever that point comes, significantly increase my Bitcoin allocation, probably some miners, whatever. Who cares what I do?
You'll wait till like the trend reverses or whatever, and then you jump in.
Yeah, I mean, like, and the ETF is obviously a bullish thing. Like, who knows when that gets approved? But like the TradFi guys all are thinking the same, right? Like for better or worse, Bitcoin's like a risk asset. It's levered beta, Nasdaq, whatever. So I think they end up buying billions upon billions upon billions of dollars of Bitcoin. We're going to see a ton of inflows. But if their equities are crashing, if their tech stock portfolio is getting hammered, they're they're not going to punt a huge amount of Bitcoin, in my opinion. So I kind of think we still got some turbulence, whether it's 12-month timeline, a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, who knows. But for better or worse, Bitcoin is the macro game now. It's less of a independent asset than ever, and I think that's a good thing if you are in favor of number go up. Obviously, like it's still gonna have its black markets, still gonna have people that don't really give a shit about the fiat exchange rate and are just denominating in Bitcoin. But the suits are coming.
The
They
suits are already here, Dylan, and they all got
but
wrecked
not the legitimate suits,
because
like
they were
the little minnow suits. Like everybody
the
like
wannabe suits.
like well, no, I mean Sailor's like a real suit, right? But like we've joked about this before. Like Sailor's like a small fish billionaire. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, he's a
Like
poor billionaire.
he's a billionaire, but he's just like a small fish billionaire.
Well, few understand he's actually the wealthiest billionaire in the world because most of them don't own Bitcoin.
Yeah, true stuff.
You're not wealthy if you don't own Bitcoin. Yeah, no, I agree on that take. I have Grinder in the comments on my borrow comment. Let me just like unpack that just real quick. If you borrow against Bitcoin and you take dollars, uh, Bitcoin should be the best collateral in the world. It's incredibly easy to liquidate. Markets trade 24/7. It's easy to custody. Um, like it is a fantastic collateral item.
Yep.
But if you're borrowing against it for any period of time, you want to make sure you have a very trusted counterparty. You don't want to necessarily borrow against your Bitcoin with BlockFi, for instance, who is just then rehypothecating it.
Yep.
And if you look at the responsible counterparties that offer Bitcoin-backed loans right now, the rates are quite high. They're like 12 to 14%. And why is that? Well, that's for two reasons. First of all, the world really hasn't priced in the fact that Bitcoin is great collateral. Most people that realize that would rather buy Bitcoin than lend you dollars. So they're not on the lending side of the equation. Those rates should be the lowest in the world at some point in the future. In the future, at some time, if Bitcoin is your collateral, you are going to get the best rates possible. We are not there yet.
It should be lower than a mortgage.
Right. On the opposite side, mortgages and stuff are all backed by the US government and they're artificially kept low. Like you get a new home mortgage, it's almost immediately sold to the government, like 2 days afterwards. All those rates are pegged and fixed and manipulated downwards. And on top of that, you also have all these different companies that live in a world that we were at zero rates for a while, and they took a while to come off of them. Like I got like an HVAC loan at 0% for 4 years. Like I just fucking highway robbery. And it's just because two things, they haven't like updated their systems yet, and they're just used to 0%, and they were hoping the Fed was going to come back down. And second of all, they know a lot of people will go into delinquency, and then they start charging them like 25% or something like that. But you set it to auto pay. Anyway, that's my thinking. If you can get like lower percentage fiat loans denominated in inflating currency, then it's not the worst idea in the world, but you need to have good cash flows. You need to have good risk management. You don't want to get wrecked. And that's kind of like how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
On the ETF side, Dylan, correct me if I'm wrong. GBTC is trying to convert to an ETF for a while. They're trading at a discount. Theory is that if GBTC, I mean, it's not the theory. GBTC gets approved, it gets converted to an ETF. It should go back up to par.
Yep.
So there's a bunch of traders trying to trade that difference.
Yep.
But this decision doesn't automatically turn it into an ETF. The SEC can technically appeal. And even
Yep.
if they don't appeal, GBTC needs to refile.
Yep.
So, but what it does do is it pretty much paves the way for BlackRock, Fidelity, and these others. It like almost guarantees their approval,
Yep.
which a lot of us have already been speculating anyway, because BlackRock owns the fucking world. So, like, if corrupt BlackRock is trying to launch an ETF, they probably have some inside knowledge that they think it's going to get approved.
Yep.
But all that aside, obviously there's a bunch of money waiting on the sidelines for BlackRock ETF. I
Yep.
think the BlackRock ETF is going to get approved eventually. But I have, like, there must be, like, I'm feeling a little bit of rumblings, but less than I thought. That there's just this signaling mechanism of BlackRock, and fuck BlackRock. Like, to be absolutely clear, like, BlackRock can go fuck themselves. Incredibly corrupt organization, and I hope they get wrecked. I hope they try and play games with Bitcoin and get wrecked as a result. But anyway, that's not my point. My point is BlackRock is the granddaddy ESG. They're like the largest fund in the world, fund manager in the world. They have $11 trillion in assets. They've been flooding Bitcoin forever. Larry Fink said it was like a token of money laundering, like all this fucking shit. And now they're launching a Bitcoin ETF. It's this massive signaling mechanism that they now approve of Bitcoin as an asset, that they would rather get involved and take their cut than sit it out. And you got to imagine that there's a bunch of rich people, family offices, corporate types, suits, if we want to call them that, definitely suits, that are like, we need to front run BlackRock, right? Like, I mean, when in history do you get to front run BlackRock? Like, it's very rare that you get to come in. I mean, obviously the humble stackers, we've been front running them this whole fucking time. It's been an honor and a privilege, but like, you still can. Like,
Yep.
what? How much time do they have? 3 months, 6 months, maybe, maybe even less. But they have time to front run BlackRock, and I wouldn't. I mean, that's my little dose of hopium for the day. Like, I wouldn't discount this idea that people start front running it. Most weekends have gotten washed out already.
Yep.
Entering a global depression, like, it could be the most crazy. Like, them fucking, and when I say them, I mean the blue checks. Them fucking around with delaying the ETFs for this long
Yep.
could create this perfect self-fulfilling prophecy narrative, whatever you want to say, where there's a global depression and equities start dropping, but BlackRock and Fidelity release their ETFs at the same time, and we get the ETF bump, and then, you know, everyone just goes out like, Bitcoin's a store of value, and it's like, oh, store of value and store of value, and then everyone just goes into it, and then we disconnect very quick, like, you know, within a matter of years rather than in a matter of decades, we disconnect from,
Yep.
like, global macro. Like, there
Yeah.
could be that situation.
No, I agree. I think when I refer to like the correlation thing, I think it's like you said, it's correlated until it's not. It's going to be, you know, the correlation on a long time frame is going to be very, very positive, but you're going to have days, maybe weeks or whatever, where like, I think similar to maybe like the fall of 2020, when, you know, Bitcoin's like after it's kind of chilling at 10K for months on end,
Yeah.
and it just starts going parabolic, and like equities up, down 1%, dollar up, down 1%. It doesn't matter, right? Bonds, like who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Bitcoin's chart is breaking out of a
Yeah,
whole
you
new
take a
range.
picture, you post a screenshot, you go like, "Bitcoin's a safe haven."
Yeah, it's
You
like,
know, and
yeah,
that's
like that.
fucking
Yeah,
sweet.
Bitcoin will be a store of value again in
Yeah.
that moment. So I agree. I think, you know, the front running BlackRock thing, yeah, 100% legitimate.
Inflation would be ripping at the same time, like, it could be, like, the most crazy scenario.
Yeah, no, I'm fully prepared for max chaos in terms of like 2024 and what we got in the coming years. And I think what you said about the BlackRock or the borrowing against Bitcoin thing, and not that like you're endorsing or whatever, but that's just the reality
Yeah.
of like, and also here's another point, and this is like one that Pierre Rochard raised back in 2014. And he wrote this thing like speculative attack, and it reads like some hyper Bitcoinization crazy scenario, but like there's a lot of truth to it of like, you know, dollars are fungible. assets, liabilities, everybody has a personal balance sheet, corporate balance sheet, institutional balance sheet, right? If you have dollar debt, whether it's credit card debt, mortgage, like Matt, you have a mortgage, maybe you have a credit card, maybe you don't, maybe you have a.
I don't run credit card. I mean, besides like the 30 days, like
Yeah.
I don't run like a balance on a credit
Yeah. But regardless, you have
card. Yeah, 30-year
denominated
mortgages
liabilities.
are good. That's an interesting little thing they got going on there.
So like every time, and I get that it's secured, technically it's secured by the house, right? But every time you buy Bitcoin instead of paying down your mortgage, right? You're actively making a decision to stack Bitcoin.
You don't pay down a 30-year mortgage in an inflationary economy.
Yeah. But the point is
what
that
Saylor did. He called what Saylor did, basically.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
6 years earlier or whatever.
And so, 100% borrowing billions of dollars of currency that it's mispriced.
And he was doing it at like 0% or whatever,
Yeah.
like fucking nothing.
Yep. And it's long dated, like 2027 or something. He has to pay it back. And he, had a bunch of different ones, but like that is going to happen in mass when the BlackRock ETF is approved, and when this economic cycle goes from whenever we trough, whenever the Fed kind of eases, whenever we go from like the bust phase to the recovery phase to the boom phase again, because it's going to happen. It's not like we're in the last economic fiat cycle ever, right? Naturally, pro-cyclical. And so what's going to happen during the next economic cycle, right? Bitcoin, like, yes, it's like if you look at the halving cycle, it's like, yeah, Bitcoin pumps after the halving, but you know what it also like really correlates with? Like PMIs, right? Like the Bitcoin, the US economic cycle, Bitcoin cycle is like in tandem with it, right? So like it's a liquidity play, obviously. We've known that. But when the next bull run comes around, and again, who knows the timing exactly? Nobody does, and nobody can realistically say that with certainty. But when it happens,
by conference,
by 2025 conference, 200K. When it happens, it's not going to be Barry Silbert and Alex Mashinsky and Sam Bankman-Fried. It's going to be Larry Fink. Well, maybe not him buying it, but it's going to be like there's going to be this quote unquote stamp of approval. There's going to be legitimate. I mean, there's always been legitimate ways to buy Bitcoin. Any way you can get funds in, get them out, and hold cold storage. But for the suits, right? There's going to be that legitimate way to get exposure, not GBTC, right? Like any institution that wanted Bitcoin exposure last bull market, they either had to go to CME and have all of these, certifications and whatever, or buy GBTC, which was OTC and was just kind of like wild west trading at a premium discount, whatever. Nobody wanted that. Or you buy MicroStrategy.
Well, it was trading at a premium for a while.
Yeah, until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
But all these big boy institutions are going to go into the most liquid avenue they can get, which is going to be, they're not going to be buying Bitcoin on Coinbase, unfortunately. They're going to be buying Larry Fink's Bitcoin wrapper that's held on Coinbase, and they're going to be able to borrow billions upon billions of dollars against it. And so that's the
fun ride.
That's the ETF hopium, right? Is like they're going to have, I really hope that, and I'm a little doubtful, skeptical. I don't think Coinbase is going to be like fraudulent with it, but I would love if there was like, a real time. Like, I think like, I hope it's like a transparent thing where they have like, daily, hourly proof of reserves with ETF. I doubt it. But that would be cool if they had like kind of a real time transparent ledger of like ETF holdings. And
I thought it'd be cool if they rugged.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But yeah,
imagine BlackRock ETF rugs in 10 years. Like that'd be crazy.
I don't think they're gonna. I mean, like, and this is also another thing with the BlackRock narrative. Like I've commented on this yesterday. Like there's so many posts on Twitter that's like the institutions are accumulating, and it's like screenshots of like the Bitcoin miners, and it's like they're the top shareholders, or like the second top shareholders is like BlackRock, and it's like
I'm guilty of that in my blue check war, because it's just people don't like BlackRock. So,
well, it's like
BlackRock owns Tesla.
Yeah, well,
BlackRock owns the blue checks.
They own every company that trades in the NASDAQ and S&P 500, right? So
I know them and Vanguard, and then Vanguard is the highest shareholder of Vanguard is BlackRock.
Yeah, it's a big institutional.
It's just a massive Ponzi.
Yeah, and
that's Ponzi's all the way down. Like you look everywhere, it's fucking Ponzi. The dollar's a fucking Ponzi. Real estate, Ponzi. Like, do you know what 1031 tax swaps are?
No, I'm not familiar.
If you sell real estate in a jurisdiction, you have to pay your cap gains tax, right? What is that, like 30% or whatever?
Yep.
But if within 90 days or however many days in that jurisdiction, you just flip it into another piece of real estate,
No
you
tax.
don't pay the cap gains.
Yep.
So, like, all the real estate's just fucking it's literally Ponzi-omics. Like, that's like tokenomics right there.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like they're just running that shit. Everything's like, it's all a Ponzi.
yeah.
Everything's a fucking Ponzi.
And like, let's be
Even
clear
Bitcoin.
too.
Bitcoin's like a Ponzi for the people. Like, it's not controlled by anybody. That's the difference.
Sound clip that.
It's
Um,
it's it's for the people, by the people. Like, think about it, like, I mean, this is key, right? All the conspiracy theories about BlackRock and Bitcoin revolve around this idea that BlackRock will accumulate a lot of Bitcoin in their ETF, which they will.
yeah.
If they're first, who's ever first, is gonna get the lion's share unless they royally fuck it up. That's, like, almost always the case. It was the case with the gold ETF. It makes sense. It logically makes sense. There's network effect,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
Liquidity begets liquidity, right? Um, BlackRock ETF is gonna get a lot of Bitcoin, but the whole point of Bitcoin is that if you have more Bitcoin, you don't have more control over the network. That is the fucking core of it.
Yep.
Um, and that's the difference with almost every other asset,
Yep.
is that every other asset is corrupted by those with control,
Yep.
and Bitcoin doesn't have that.
BlackRock's used to getting like board seats, you know?
Exactly. They're not getting any board seats on this one.
No, they have their node, or Coinbase has their
No
node on it.
circuit breakers. They can't stop shit. They can't force changes. It's a whole different beast. They have no choice but to play the game. What is that? We already quoted Pierre, that Bitstein.
Yep. No, I agree. It's gonna be an interesting ride. Relatedly, I think kind of on your Barry Silbert
Fuck Barry.
your Barry Silbert points, it'll be very, very interesting to see. The reason I'm interested to see who's first is that I tweeted yesterday and got some pushback about. I said, regardless of their stated intentions, and I think Grayscale realizes that an ETF is in it like inevitable anyway, so they just want to be part of it. But Grayscale's interest is the status quo. Grayscale would love if there was no ETFs for the next 10 years.
Because they're making that 2% fucking fee
Dude, they print
on
30
the
Bitcoin
total.
a day
Yeah.
in
What a scam.
fees. 30 Bitcoin a day in fee revenue,
Yeah.
right? So like Barry Silbert, DCG owes all that money to Gemini, and there's all that, like they blew up, right? Or no, it's not DCG, it's Genesis, and then DCG loaned to Genesis and whatever, right?
Talking about commingling.
Yeah, the only way, yeah, but it's an astute way of commingling, right? With
Yeah.
different
DCG loaned it to their subsidiaries, borrowed
yeah,
it from Gemini users.
yep. But
Completely above board.
when I'm thinking about like DCG's interests or Grayscale's interests, right? It's like, well, they have 600,000 Bitcoin. They're printing 2% a year, and you can't redeem. You can't get out of the trust. The only way that their revenue stays flat, never, like if we're just thinking in Bitcoin terms, right? Because the price, USD
Right.
price goes up or down, is if they 4x. If we're just assuming, right? I'm assuming that the fee for the ETF will be 50 basis points.
They have
That's
to drop it to compete.
right. Yeah. So either the fee is going to be 50 basis points once the ETF
Instead of
gets
200, instead of 2%.
instead of 2%. So fees are going down 75%. So the only way Grayscale's revenue stays the same is if they drop the fee. If the fees go to 50%, is if they 4x their Bitcoin holdings. So they hold, in that case, they would have to hold 12% of all Bitcoin ever.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing a dangerous game, right? Because the game is, they want an ETF to be delayed as long as possible.
Yep.
But if an ETF is going to be approved, they need to be the first one approved.
Yep.
Because if there's another ETF that gets approved first, then the discount actually widens because there's going to be a bunch of money that's had enough of Barry and moves over. Like most of the money is like bag holder cope right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's and another interesting point about the GBTC thing is that there was a bunch of people that in one way or another, whether it was through CME or unregulated futures exchanges or whatever, or OTC borrow, is they bought GBTC at a big discount. It was basically the opposite of the other trade, and they've been
Right.
shorting Bitcoin,
Hoping that GBTC increases to par and then they're
yeah,
good. But meanwhile, GBTC charges fees on the top number. They
Yep.
charge fees on par value, the
Yeah.
full 100% value, not the 50%.
Yeah. So at the
It's such
bottom,
a fucking scam.
yeah, at the bottom, people were buying GBTC, or anybody that held GBTC, you were getting a 4% fee on your holdings.
It's insane.
Yeah. So that was a big mess. I'm, looking forward to that kind of weight being off the Bitcoin market. A lot of GBTC holders got wrecked. Some activist plays made some good money on the discount narrowing. GBTC's up like 100 something percent this year, but after a pretty shit year,
And it's
2022,
still at a 50% discount or something, right? What is that?
like 15.
15 discount?
Yeah, it's like 16, 17%, 15%, something.
Oh shit! So many degens, man.
Yeah. It was
I
like,
remember people talking about that trade like years ago. Like, oh, it's such an easy trade. There's no risk. It's gonna obviously when an ETF gets approved, it's gonna go up to 1.
yeah. Yeah, that was a big, big bear market play that people got wrecked on.
That was like when you gotta love when the right side IQ guys get wrecked. It's just so fun.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
here's a 20-part thread that ages horribly in 7 months. It's
Yep.
fucking amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, stay humble, stack sense. Yeah.
Exactly, just left side. Stay on
Love
the
it.
stack sats.
Yeah.
Is the key it's the key to winning. Last but not least, Dylan, you see this awesome Nostr live chat I got going on here where, like,
Yeah.
people
What's
zap.
up with that? How does that work?
So this is zap.stream.
Okay.
These 2 guys, Kieran and Carnage. Kieran is the head of Snort Social. He's the lead maintainer of Snort Social, one of the Nostr clients.
Yep.
They basically built this thing in, like, a weekend and have been iterating on it. It uses Nostr for communications and zaps. Like, everything is built on top of Nostr, so they didn't have to, like, reinvent the wheel. Like, all these people's accounts are their regular, normal Nostr accounts, and then they can just send Bitcoin natively through it because my Lightning address is attached to it. And I didn't have to change. The crazy thing is I didn't have to change anything on my side. Like, it just uses normal RTMP. Like, if you're using Restream or one of these services to stream out to, like, YouTube and Twitch and stuff, you can just go straight to here. And then, of course, they have server costs, so I just pay them sats for my server costs. So,
Nice.
like, the audience is donating sats live on air, and then I give them. It's like this beautiful open
So I have a few questions.
thing.
One's, I mean, not so much related to this. It just seems like a pretty damn cool app, and the Lightning Nostr stuff is super exciting because it's all open source, and you kind of get this like really, really, maybe not cypherpunk, but like this like utopian kind of digital economy that's like super, super. It's like seamless. Like there's no intermediaries. It's like kind of like this digital. It's like digital cash. It's beautiful. One of the questions I have for
In the
Nostr
future.
is, well, this is maybe personal. It's not too deep, but like, what Nostr client do you like best for Mac or for laptop and then phone? And then the second one is, and I haven't done too much digging on this, but what are your thoughts on? I believe right now there's like not an option to change password or like key
There
credentials.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, if you get rugged with your private key, you're just rugged.
Yeah. How does
Um,
is there a fix to that? Is there any fix, or is that
there
just gonna be?
Look, Nostr's cool because it's simple and robust. It's a very simple protocol. And a lot of people have tried to reinvent the wheel. You have the Mastodon guys, you have the Blue Sky guys, like a million different, the did guys over at, like, Microsoft Ion and stuff. They all come up with all these, like, crazy fucking schemes, but at the core of it, what they miss is 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 the actual, like, what is the value prop? The value prop is you don't want to be rugged. You
Yep.
want to be unruggable from third parties, or rug
Yep.
resistant from third parties. And Nostr is incredibly simple, and that some trade-offs are made, and one of those is that you have this fixed private key that you're, like, pasting into different apps.
Yeah.
There's different ways we can work around it. I'm sure we'll figure out something. There's a couple different proposals. There's this thing that Pablo has been working on. Pablo's like this legendary developer in the Nostr ecosystem, called NSEC Bunker. And then, like, you can, if you're on desktop, you can use something like Albi or NoS2x, where that's called NIP7. So NIP is like a Nostr improvement proposal. So NIP7 was this improvement proposal where the key is held somewhere else, but they sign a message to approve that you're part of it. So, like,
Yep.
if you have your NSEC in Alby or no S2X, you have your private key there. The individual web apps you use can't rug you, but obviously Alby or no S2X could rug you.
Do you use
Um,
either?
yeah, I use both.
I
They're
use
both
Alby.
yeah, they're both good. Alby's nice because Alby has the Lightning wallet stuff built into it too.
Yep.
So I use Alby with my NSEC is an Alby. Please don't rug me, and
Because I feel like that's a
and
risk, right? Like
and
Alby's a risk there.
yeah, but my Lightning is my own Lightning node.
Yep.
So I'm not using a custodial Lightning node. That is a little bit more difficult right now. The Mutiny Wallet guys are doing some really cool work on that front, at least for sending zaps. Um, there's still a lot of work to be done on the receiving Lightning side. Most people, it is a pain point. Most people are receiving on custodial wallets, but at least it's an interoperable standard, right? So like there's many different custodial wallets that people are using. Too
Yep.
many wallets of Satoshi. But anyway, my point is like I think this trade-off of, and I'm gonna eat my fucking, like I'm not gonna feel this way if my NSEC gets fucking rugged. But look, things have trade-offs, and the fact of the matter is Elon can't just like wake up one morning and flip a switch and ban you from his platform.
Yep.
But as a result, you have to protect your private key.
Yep.
Um,
Love
and
it.
and we can work on that in the future, but in the meantime, it gets the job done. And I think more of the pain points are honestly on the app side.
Mm.
Um, and the apps are making, increased development. And I just don't think we have um, I don't think we have an option. I think these centralized platforms have way too much control, and it's not just X or Twitter's new Elon, Elon's new Twitter with that he wants to be WeChat or whatever. It's all of them: TikTok, Facebook.
You're dead on, by the way. And I say this as someone that's verified,
Yeah.
blue check, whatever. But you're 100% right. The vision is of Elon's panopticon. He wants to not only get social media surveillance, but financial
He wants
surveillance.
full control. They
Yeah.
all want full control as a service, right?
Yeah.
Like that is their business model, and we need protocols. And Nostr is going to be the answer, and it's going to take a tiny bit of time to build out, but we're already close. Like it's growing. It's growing really quickly. My favorite client is Primal.net,
Yep.
and they released an iPhone app, so you can download it on iPhone.
Nice.
Um, fully open source. So Primal has like a controversial feature where they cache between your relays, and there's a lot of nuance here between trust and stuff. Um, but like the caching server as currently implemented adds a trusted element, and in the future they want to make it so anyone can run a caching server. It's fully open source, so anyone can run one now, and that your client will like check and make sure that the caching service isn't lying to you. And if the caching service isn't lying to you, then it just uses the caching service. But if it catches it lying, then it can go directly to the relays or it can go to a different caching service. And why does that matter? Because most people are not going to be in it for the freedom at first.
Mm.
If you use this, like Primal is close to the point where it loads quicker than Twitter. It has no censorship. It's just a better fucking social media app,
Nice.
right? It's just better.
Yeah, I've used
And
desktop, not the iPhone one though.
yeah, and yeah, there's a lot of improvement being made. We're doing a lot of support. Yeah, see, we have Studio 314 official saying not a big Primal fan. Well, that's what's cool about it. You can put your NSEC in whatever client you want to put in. There's a lot of great fucking clients out there. Obviously, I shouted out Snort.social earlier. Damus and JB55 are fucking awesome. Amethyst is fantastic. Iris is solid, and it's cool. There's like this open competing marketplace for clients. And Primal itself is false. So people can go and fork Primal if they don't like Primal and then build on top of what Primal has already built. So you have all these different clients. It's very rug resistant. And in the meantime, I want to practice what I preach. So I've stopped using Twitter and I just use Nostr only. And
Are you
it's
done
still
on Twitter completely?
yeah, I don't. You'll see me post an occasional Nostr shill tweet, but like
Mm.
I didn't even announce the show on Twitter. Like
Yeah,
the
I
only reason
tagged
the
you.
Twitter people know is because you posted it on Twitter.
Yeah.
I just and like, do I get hit for that? Yeah, early on, like you always get hit for it. Like, do I get hit on Dispatch that I try and operate Dispatch with high integrity? Like, yeah, like I could have way more viewers if I sold out. And it's same with this, but you want to be the change you want to see in the world.
Respect.
And I think I'll tell you, dude. If I post something on Nostr and it's interesting or controversial, everyone on Twitter knows about it
Mm,
already at this point.
yep.
That's what people don't realize. Like there's a shift at some point where most even if Nostr doesn't have the majority of users, where most interesting content on any centralized platform gets cross posted on Nostr because people want the engagement and the sats and whatnot, and vice versa, where if there's something interesting posted on Nostr, it gets cross posted to the centralized platforms. And we're very close to that point. Like we're really, really close. And the people that have larger audiences or whatever are already there. Like if I post something like within 15 minutes, I'll post something on Nostr controversial. Within 15 minutes, my phone's blown up on people asking me why I said that. I was like, oh, so you are checking Nostr.
Yeah.
Like good to know.
You see Arkanox comment with his zap.
What? Delete your Twitter on stream. I'm torn on the deleting my Twitter on stream because it's kind of used as a Nostr beacon right now.
Yeah, no, that's
But
funny.
I go back and forth on it because look, there's two of them did it. They have 20K sats. I can't be bought, but maybe 10 million sats, and I'll consider it.
Yeah. Love it.
But yeah, that's how I feel about like Nostr. And dude, what's crazy about Nostr? And we can have. I know we've been going for 2 hours. Like I could go for another 2 hours on Nostr alone. But like in the beginning, Bitcoiners bootstrap Nostr. Like it's almost all Bitcoiners are using it. There's a bunch of other people that are starting to use it now, but early days was all Bitcoiners. All the developers were mostly Bitcoin developers. Bitcoiners bootstrap Nostr and are bootstrapping Nostr. But there's going to be a turning point where social media, like our society is so addicted to fucking social media.
Mm,
And there's going to be a turning point where Nostr becomes the on-ramp to Bitcoin for people because it takes a paradigm shift in your head to actually go out and buy Bitcoin,
yep.
but it doesn't to shit post on a social media app that's
Yep.
just a better social media app and you get paid freedom money. You
Yep.
just get fucking freedom money for shit posting.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people, there's going to be billions of people that their first sats are on Nostr.
Hmm.
And it's just beautifully complementary in that result. And that's just on the social media side. That's not even like wallets communicating with each other using Nostr or like AI payments with Nostr using Pablo's data vending machine where like the payments are done with Bitcoin and the AI communicates with the customer using Nostr. And like there's all these crazy different integrations you can do on different apps and services just using this interoperable communication protocol that has a payment protocol built into it. But even if you just take out just the social media, it's fucking massive. But then you add everything else and just blows your mind.
It's exciting shit, man.
That's my show.
Love it. I got it. You're firing me up. I've reposted a couple, admittedly not as much original content, but I've reposted a few of my tweets on Nostr recently, and I'll start doing that more and maybe even chime in some original hot takes on there.
Dude, people who might be joining us might think that this is just a little Nostr part I added onto the end of a different conversation that we were having. But the whole reason this conversation happened was because I saw you post on Nostr after not posting there for a little bit. And I was like, we should rip a dispatch. I invited you on Nostr, and I was always intending to try and encourage you to use Nostr more often. So come join us in the revolution.
Yeah, man. I'll be there. Appreciate the input as well.
Fuck yeah. Dylan, this was a pleasure as always. Before we wrap up, you want to hit us with some final thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, we started this on a Binance tirade, talking shit coins and, a bunch of nonsense. The entire point of it is that you shouldn't trust anybody. Don't trust talking heads. Don't trust charismatic actors. Don't trust CEOs. That's always my signal, my messaging signal is it's not about CZ. It's not about any of these shitcoin Ponzi people. It's not about it's about don't trust, verify. Once you come to understand Bitcoin at a deep fundamental level, that's where I come from a point of view. There's no other agenda than that, and you can make your own trade-offs or decisions that have their own trade-offs from there once you kind of understand that. So yeah, I mean, it was awesome to catch up. 2 hours flew by. I'm super pumped to see what happens with Nostr. Excited to see what happens in the next year with Bitcoin and the price action. But being honest, I mean, I understand. I mean, I am a a Bitcoin analyst. I spend a lot of time looking at traditional financial markets, but like being real, like a lot of the day-to-day, week-to-week exchange rate volatility is a bunch of noise. And when you actually understand where all this is going, the innovation that Bitcoin, that Satoshi brought to the world, of freedom money, not much else matters when you kind of understand the trend. So yeah, man, I'm super, super pumped and excited that I got to join you here for a 2-hour rip. It was like our second or third one, I believe. But yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see what unfolds. And I'm excited to start using Nostr more.
I think it was our third one. I'm looking forward to the fourth one already. Well, thank you for joining me. Fuck yeah. So, freaks, you might have noticed that we did like a cold open the last 2 episodes. I'm trying to do. I'm reading the podcasting 2.0 boostergrams at the end. So I'm going to read those right now. Obviously, the last episode was yesterday, so only 2 ride or die freaks got boostergrams in via podcasting 2.0 apps. We have at Eric99 with 50,000 sats, Stay Humble Stack sats, and we had at Piez Piez with 1,000 sats, saying thank you all. I consider you guys to listen to that one. It was a nice we're in it for the tech episode. With some really just great open source contributors that this mission relies on. It's incredibly important. Freaks, if you enjoyed the episode, let me know. Feedback. If you didn't enjoy the episode, let me know as well. Feedback is appreciated. Trying to build this thing to provide as much value as possible for you. All of our links are at citadeldispatch.com. You can find it on your favorite platform by searching Citadel Dispatch. Easiest way to support the show is just to subscribe and share it on your favorite platform, whether that's any podcasting app, YouTube, Twitch, Zap.stream. And then last but not least, huge shout out to the Ride or Die freaks who joined us in the live chat. I fucking love this Nostr chat. I'm going to give people a little bit more time to a couple more episodes where they talk through the Twitch chat and the YouTube chat. And then we're going to go Nostr only is the plan. But huge shout out to the freaks who zapped live. And as you can see, we got the great Gazoo. Seems to have gotten the most, has contributed the most zaps, but I don't know how to click around in this interface, and I think I just fucked it up. So don't look at the screen, but there, it's back. Thank you guys for supporting the show. Thank you for listening live. Thank you, Dylan, for joining us. Stay humble, stack sats. Appreciate you all. Peace.
Thanks, Odell. See you, brother.